Hi, thank you for joining us to the second part of the health talks organized and hosted by Plant-Based Health Professionals UK. We have only two more talks left. The first one is by Dr. Areli Cuevas-Ocampo. I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. She's a medical doctor who follows a raw vegan lifestyle. She is a board certified in anatomic clinical pathology and neuropathology, and she's also certified in plant-based nutrition by the University of Winchester. She's an expert in raw vegan diet, and that is what she's going to talk to us about today. If you have any questions, just comment in the chat box, and I will ask her. So, Areli, are you here? Do you want to join us?
I'm ready to join you.
Hello, hi. So I think you have a presentation for us, don't you?
I do, yes.
So whenever you are ready, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. Share. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
And that's my presentation. Can everybody see it?
I can see it, so I assume everybody else can see it too.
So I'm going to put like a presenter mode. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Perfect. Okay, so thank you so much, Leila, for inviting me to this Plant-Based Expo 2021. I'm so happy because for me, it's just an amazing opportunity to make the plant-based movement aware of the correct way to follow a raw vegan diet. My name is Areli, as you mentioned, Cuevas-Ocampo. I am originally from Mexico City, and I studied medicine and pathology in my home country. I also repeated my residency in pathology and my subspecialty in neuropathology in the US. And then I moved to the UK to work for 2 years, but I'm back now in the US again after 2 years of living in the UK. And throughout my career, medical education, I've experimented on myself all the spectrums of dietary patterns that you can imagine. I grew up omnivore. I gained a lot of weight during my internship in medical school. That was back in 2006, 2007. I wanted to lose the weight, so I followed the Atkins diet because I didn't know anything about diets. I lost the weight, but I wasn't feeling great. Then I started reading more about nutrition, came across vegetarianism, veganism, and eventually that led me to raw veganism. And just as you was skeptical, there are so many stories that are not necessarily very encouraging to follow a raw vegan diet. There is a lot of misconceptions surrounding this concept, this extremist way of eating, and has a lot of bad reputation, honestly, unfortunately. But, I'm here to dispel the myths. Hopefully, it's a short period of time just to explain everything, but I'll try to be to the point. So having said that introduction, that's my disclaimer, and I'm gonna go through some of these outlines, definitions and clarifications. What is the human-specific diet? Evolution versus adaptation. Where is the science supporting this lifestyle? And how we can incorporate this diet to prevent inflammation, because as we know, inflammation is almost the root cause of most of our chronic degenerative conditions nowadays, and a little bit about microbiome and epigenetics with this lifestyle. So definitions, clarifications. The names that you see in pink, fruitarian, frugivore, raw vegan, raw food, are those dietary patterns that you don't necessarily have to cook your food. And there are so many adepts to these categories, but then we have all other type of lifestyle. For example, the vegan movement. Vegan is an ethical stand, as we know, but many people use vegan diet to refer to a plant-based diet. We have plant-based diet, we have whole foods. When people talk about whole foods, it's not necessarily vegan. Some people include meat in that category. That's why we use whole food plant-based. We have the nutritarians that only focus on the highly nutritious food. We have omnivores. So all these definitions, but what does it mean to be a raw vegan? Well, it means that we eat our food in the natural state at the room temperature, however we find it in nature, from the original source. That means that if I have a fruit tree, I don't have it, but somebody collected for me and I bought it at the supermarket. So if I had a fruit tree and I just reached my hand, an apple, and I cut it, that's exactly what it means to be a raw vegan. Raw because it's unaltered, non-cooked, is perfectly cooked by the sun. The sun really is an important aspect in our lives for overall health, and also plays an important role in cooking our food. That's, one of the principles of this lifestyle. And vegan, because we are not supposed to be depending on other living beings to get most of our nutrition. So that's the lifestyle that I advocate for. There's some people who are raw foodists, but some of them include raw milk, for example, from animals, or raw eggs, or raw meat, even raw fish. So I'm not talking about raw foodism. Can be interchangeable sometimes. Some people call themselves raw foodists. I think raw vegan is more like what I actually embody. Now, when you come across raw vegan channels or accounts, you're going to find a lot of crazy stuff. And it's not crazy because every single one of these items probably has its time and place, but that doesn't mean that this is what all raw vegans do. When people think about raw veganism, they think, oh, the fasters, the ones that do enemas, the ones that always are juicing or dry fasting or sun gazing or breatharianism or 30 bananas a day or water fasting, raw until 4, all these approaches and terminologies that people have used, and it's not necessarily bad. Sometimes people need enemas because they're so constipated. Nothing wrong with that. But until what point you're going to rely on enemas to flush your colon? If you have a high fiber diet, you don't need enemas. But that's another story. I just want to clarify that when we talk about raw veganism, I'm not talking about any of these concepts. If people are doing that and they claim to be raw vegans, just, follow the message of raw veganism, but not necessarily the other things. Again, it's not bad. Sometimes fasting, is therapeutic, but raw veganism has nothing to do with this, okay? Now, let's move on the human-specific diet. I just want to point out that if you're religious, the best argument to convince someone who is religious, in the Christianity, Adam and Eve, what was the first type of diet that they followed? Raw veganism. They were in the Garden of Eden, and they, even God commanded them to, you should eat everything that grows from the trees, from the plants, from the bushes. That's for you to eat. And those were the first raw vegans, if you are Christian and believer. If you are, on the other hand, atheist or agnostic, more scientifically oriented, and you believe in evolution, anthropology, etc., well, remember that for life to originate, we have, this kind of experiment where you resemble the original conditions for life to occur on Earth. When you had humidity, you had sunlight, you had warmth, you have water. And if you agitate those elements, there were some hydrogen molecules, carbon, oxygen, etc., to form the first elements. Carbon, carbohydrates, proteins, and then living organisms, etc. That's what evolution says, right? First, we have a nice primitive environment, then unicellular organisms, multicellular organisms, fish, amphibious, reptiles, birds, mammals, and then the Homo species, etc., etc. Whatever you believe, if you believe in this evolutionary approach, we necessarily needed the right environment, and the right environment for that is the tropics. Some people argue, especially the paleos and the ketos and the carnivores, like we were Neanderthals and that we were living in caves, chasing mammoths and big animals, and then we ate a lot of meat. That's probably the ones who migrated, because I can show you here. According to this map about anthropological studies, life originated in the equatorial areas, and then we migrated, like in this map. You can see different hotspots here in orange, and most of them are in countries and in regions that are in the tropical areas, in the Ecuador, close to the Ecuador. As soon as humans started to move, obviously they had to adapt, right? They had to adapt. If they moved, chasing food, I'm referring to raw veganism because, initially, before the fire existed, before agriculture existed, before hunting and developing of all these tools to chase animals. We were collectors. We were so lazy. We were like, yeah, bananas, papayas. We were in the tropics. Eventually, we had to move and we had to adapt. Agriculture started, fire discovery, tools, creation, hunting, etc. So does it mean that because we cook our food, we are supposed to be eating cooked food? We can adapt to eat cooked food. Nothing wrong with that. What is my livelihood, my chances of survival with raw vegan food versus a whole food plant-based diet, healthy cooked vegan food? What are my chances to, living a decade longer than if I eat cooked food? I don't know, but the quality of life, the preservation of, good skin, good tissues, pain-free, more vitality, more energy. For me, that's a great exchange. I don't want to be immortal, but I just think that my body functions more optimally when I feed it with the food that is designed for us to eat. Many say, well, I live in the UK. I used to live in the UK as well. And I follow a raw vegan diet over there. You say, well, the UK is an island. We don't have tropical fruits. It's not natural for us. Well, nothing is natural nowadays. Fortunately, our modern lifestyle allows us to have all these imports, allow us to have heating in our houses, and all these things that make our life easier. So, if you want to take a natural approach to that, yeah, you should eat locally. You should eat ethically sourced. You should eat as organic as possible. But also, don't forget about your origins. Just because we adapted doesn't mean that is the best for us. And if you can accommodate your environment and your sources for you to procure your vehicle and keep it in a healthier state, take advantage of it. Take advantage of the imports. Take advantage of the money that you have so you can buy the best fuel for your body. So I spend a lot of money in fruits and vegetables, but I don't care because it's an investment on myself and my health, and I feel at my best. And it's an investment because I'm not going to be relying on pills or procedures, knocking on the wood in the future to preserve my health as long as I can. Now, this chart, you may find it online. Honestly, I don't know who is the author. I think I need a citation to give credit to whoever created this, but it's a very nice chart. If you Google or put in your browser, I don't use Google anymore, I use DuckDuckGo, but if you put, for example, human-specific diet or humans are frugivores, this is going to be the first image that appears in your search, and you're going to see how comparative anatomy makes us understand what is the most suitable diet for us. And if you look at the columns that are to the on your right-hand side, the frugivore, which is the chimpanzees, the bonobos, etc., really have the same dentures, the same mouth opening angle, the same salivary structure, tongue surface, etc. The length of our colon, the length of our small bowel, etc., is very similar. Obviously, we are not climbing trees, but we have that capacity. We have lost most of our mobility abilities because of our sedentary lifestyle, and everything in the modern societies made us deviate from what we were originally designed to do and eat. So if you compare by comparative anatomy, all the features of a frugivore versus a human, we are very similar. And I mean, this is not a conference for carnivores to convince you that we are not carnivores, but this chart is very good to explain the differences and the similarities. And again, our colon, salivary glands, liver size, limbs, locomotion, cooling system, nails, all these things, we really resemble the Homo species. We are Homo sapiens, but there are many homos in that genera or classification in terms of evolution. Now, for me, the human-specific diet is something that is natural, that is attractive to the eye. That's why we have color vision, because we can detect what is ripe. We can smell what is good for us. There is no need to cook it. it's just right there. Obviously, if we live in Thailand or in Costa Rica, we will have access to our original diet. Now, PubMed. PubMed is a collection of medical literature and biological sciences that collects all the evidence to support something in terms of health-related issues. So if you go to PubMed and if you put fruitarian diet or raw vegan diet, you're going to find not many results. For example, I think I did this search maybe a year ago. If I put plant-based diet, I came across more than 500 results. Vegan diet, 53 results, etc., etc. Probably there are more studies nowadays. But if you put raw vegan or raw food diet, you find less than 100. And most of them are probably raw food diets for cats or raw food diets for pets, etc. The evidence of raw food diets on humans have not been necessarily studied at the scientific level. Now, remember that back in the 50s and 1920s to 1950s, doctors recommended smoking. Does that mean that just because doctors nowadays do not recommend raw food, that means that doesn't apply to us? Now we know that tobacco smoking is a cause of lung cancer. In the past, they promoted it. The medical system promoted it. Now, the medical system promotes still, unfortunately, a moderate approach to everything, right? Everything in moderation. Plant-based is getting momentum, but it's not quite there. You have all this push back and forth of the animal and the meat and dairy industry to say, yeah, milk is great and all these things. You will always find some scientific study to support your particular bias or your particular agenda, honestly. So we shouldn't, as I mentioned in this slide, do really need to wait for scientists to publish an extensive study to prove what is obvious. What is obvious for us is our human-specific diet, based not only on our anatomy, but also on those anthropological facts that I gave you. And science, for the most part, is descriptive, right? You can find science, again, to describe every single dietary trend that you want, and you're going to find science to support it, but not for raw veganism. And don't take me wrong, science is good. Science helps us understand reality, to avoid mistakes, and to follow the best approach for our greatest benefit. What are the features of a good scientific study? Well, it has to have a big sample with cases and controls, longitudinal, long-term, randomized, double-blinded, free of bias or assumptions. In the raw vegan diet, you're not going to find a great sample. Let's compare raw vegans versus cooked vegans. You're not going to find the right sample. Why? Because the raw vegan diet is usually promoted by chiropractors, naturopaths, hippies, people that are, living the van lifestyle or the bicycle or the backpack lifestyle. And we kind of discredit and look down to those people because we think that they don't have the credentials or things like that. But if you open your mind, you will realize that probably the wisdom of anecdote still exists, and we should not disregard, some of the teachings that these people are doing. And just because it's a single case report or anecdotal evidence shouldn't be disregarded. Every scientific endeavor starts with a case report, an observation, an anecdote, and from there we can collect a big sample and put it to a test. In the case of raw vegans, you have, people who follow a kind of like gourmet raw vegan, some people who are more into raw nuts and seeds and, raw vegan resemblances of every single food item that we know, like raw vegan pizza, raw vegan burger, raw vegan pasta, or things that are more elaborated, but are not necessarily the most optimal. So the topic of this talk is how to do a raw vegan diet. I'll just mention quickly that, again, in PubMed, if you look for raw veganism, some articles are going to pop up, like this is a case report, vegan triple Ironman on raw foods and vegetables. Another one, changes in the quality of life. And in meal markers, after staying in a raw vegan institute, a pilot study. So you're going to find a little bit of evidence here and there. My favorite one is this one. Dr. Brooke Goldner on social media. She's Goodbye Lupus, and she guides with diet and lifestyle teachings women with lupus to overcome that autoimmune disorder. And she studied, or she presents 2 case studies of 2 women who reversed in 6 weeks lupus nephritis with a raw vegan diet. So for me, that tells me a lot, honestly. Now, there is another PhD, I think, candidate, or maybe she's already a doctor, from New York University. And her thesis was about, is fruit eating responsible for big brains? And you can find this article in Nature or Science magazine. And basically the premise is that, yes, probably the reason why we evolved from our Homo cousins is because we actually, or the branch or the group of chimpanzees or bonobos, whoever are our more direct ancestors, those are the ones who actually were chasing for the most colorful, nutritious food. And that's usually colorful tropical fruit. So she explains a lot about that. If you're interested, this is something to check. This is basically, I'm going to skip it because probably I'm over time, but I just wanted to explain how to follow a raw vegan lifestyle. So what foods you should eat. And I put, in different sizes in my characters. At the top, our lifestyle is based on fresh fruits. People think, oh, fruit has so much sugar. Fruit is not enough. Fruit is deficient. This is extremist. I'm not saying only fruit. I'm saying the majority of our calories in this lifestyle should come from fruit, but not every kind of fruit. I'm not going to get all my calories if I just eat strawberries, for example. I really focus on tropical fruit because those are the most digestible friendly or digestion friendly. Those are the most hydrating, softer to my organism, for my digestive tract. Everything is packed in a nice presentation with tropical fruit. I can eat for breakfast, a couple of papayas, and I'm satisfied until lunch. That's just an example. Or I can do, mixing bananas with blueberry smoothie or spinach. Things that are combining or in the right combination, that's another whole subject. But I would encourage you to investigate more on yourself and educate yourself. Don't blame the ex-vegans or ex-raw vegans of their failures, and don't blame the diet. Let's just be honest, mature enough to understand that probably they didn't do it the right way. And how is the right way to follow this? Your calories should come from carbohydrates, and our carbohydrates in a raw vegan lifestyle is fruit. And again, prefer tropical fruit over mountain fruit like berries, blueberries. Those are great as complements, like to increase your antioxidants, to increase all the benefits of berries, but not necessarily should constitute your meal. Your meal should come, the bulk of it, of big, juicy, ripe, preferably local, but if you're in the UK, obviously they're not local bananas. Well, rely on imports, That's my big emphasis. People forget about the consumption of fruit and they focus on raw vegan burgers, raw vegan brownies. No, the purpose of this lifestyle is not to keep it raw, is to keep it as close as nature intended for us to eat as possible. So the fruit is the key. Then the vegetables, of course. Monkeys and our cousins in the Homo category eat a lot of leafy greens. And that's a big component of our diet as well. Vegetables, the ones that are fruits actually. Cucumber is a fruit. Tomato is a fruit. Zucchini is a fruit. Peppers are fruits. Everything that has a seed is a fruit. So yes, we eat a lot of fruity vegetables, but we also eat fruits, like in small quantities, obviously, like shredded carrots, beets, cruciferous veggies sometimes. Most of the times we prefer sprouts, for example. Those are great sources of protein, antioxidants, nutrition, all the things that the greens gave us. I mean, probably some of you are knowledgeable about the benefits of eating more greens, fresh greens. If you're going to eat spinach, for example, And if you want to incorporate more raw fruits and vegetables, don't cook your spinach. Eat them fresh. They're more nutritious, more satisfying, more hydrating, and you're going to preserve all the enzymes inside of them. Then sprouts, as I mentioned. I mentioned nuts and seeds below because our priorities, again, is carbohydrates. Raw nuts and seeds are fats, and we keep our fats low. In the winter, sometimes I increase my fat intake just to get me through it, but it's not 30% or 40%. You know, many people don't realize how much fat they're eating until they document their intakes. So in our lifestyle, fat is secondary. Lettuce has fat, bananas have fat. Yeah, we should supplement our diet with, you know, maybe a handful of seeds and nuts, but not everything. Some people say, oh, Raving and Lifestyle, let's eat the whole bag of nuts. That's not the way, because you're going to get constipated, you're going to feel bloated, you're going to feel terrible. Fat slows you down. Focus on the fruit. I'm not saying deprive your calories. I'm saying the calories should come from fruit. And obviously you have dry fruits and vegetables, nut milks, raw nut butters, seaweed. At the bottom, I put olive oil, coconut oil with a question mark, because again, this is processed food. Probably was not heated during the extraction, probably it's cold pressed, probably it's extra virgin, whatever adjective that is for marketing purposes that gives you the comfort to say, oh, it's super healthy, you know, extra virgin, cold pressed. It's a processed food. Oils are processed food. So I put question mark because, let's be honest, a tablespoon on your salad of olive oil is not going to hurt you. But I don't need it. I would rather eat like a third or half of an avocado and I get my fats, you know, or sometimes I put in my dressing chia seeds or flax seeds or hemp seeds, and I have my omega-3 requirements fulfilled when I do that, or in my smoothies. There's so many ways to do it, but this is the list of priorities. Fermented foods, again, controversial. Do you need it to have a great microbiome? Probably not, because if you have your microbiome being fed by high fiber fruit and vegetables, I don't think you need a little bit of help with fermented food. Some people may need it for transition. People who are living the omnivore diet, maybe they need it because they're not having fiber. So, you know, if you want to incorporate it, it's not bad, but it's not a must. So just to summarize, carbohydrate is our main fuel. Prefer fresh, ripe, seasonal, local, and if possible, organic. If not, just wash it pretty well. Then, if you cannot get all your calories from tropical fruit because it's so expensive, well, rely on root vegetables. Cook them, but never boil them. Boil them, but never fry them or use like oils basically to cook it. You should steam it, boil it, or bake it. Rely on vegetables, cruciferous veggies, etc. Keep the fats low. How much is low? 8 to 10% of fats is ideal. And to have that awareness, again, you can use apps like chronometer.com. You can put your daily intake of whatever. Just document your calories, document the food that you're eating, and you will find out how much fat you are consuming. You will be surprised. Sometimes you will reach 25% and you didn't know. You thought that you were eating low fat, and it's not the case. I wouldn't go above 20% for health purposes. And this is a chart of comparison of oils. The red ones are the most saturated ones and the most not optimal for our circulatory system and our heart. So you can see coconut oil, it's like has this big red band because it's saturated and it's bad for you. Coconut oil for cooking is a no-no. Canola oil, sunflower oil, flaxseed oil, probably. But again, oils are processed food. I will avoid them, honestly. And protein, don't worry about it. Again, this is a screenshot of my chronometer track of what I eat on a day. I don't know if you can see, but I put bananas, blueberry, frozen and sweetened because I ate a smoothie that day. I put some dates, I put some chia seeds, And basically that was a big jar of smoothie. And I did it for practical purposes. But if you can eat whole food rather than blended, that's much better. But, it doesn't hurt you. So I documented everything that I ate. And even though I'm a petite woman, I eat over 2,000 calories on a raw vegan diet. And you can see here on the left-hand side column, the bars, the blue, the red, and the green, my total protein and carbs and fat. Again, I'm at the top of all my requirements. You can see here the vitamins, I'm exceeding vitamin B's, vitamin C, vitamin A. Sometimes vitamin E, I incorporate different type of nuts just to get my levels up. You don't have to eat 100% of everything every single day. Your body's so wise that when you don't eat something, it stores it. When you are deficient on something, it gets to the stores until our own stores are depleted. Then that when we fall in deficiencies. But again, this is just to point out that you don't have to have everything at once. My amino acids, with this same breakdown of all that food that I eat on a day, I have almost all my requirements in essential amino acids. There's no deficiency whatsoever. Iron, again, 82%. Well, tomorrow maybe I'll get 120% and I'll be fine. Focus on the greens. Many people neglect leafy greens, prefer them fresh, don't cook them. And that's why I say tender leafy greens. You wouldn't be inclined to, go and grass on kale. You will be more inclined to romaine lettuce or spinach or, like a lamb lettuce, all these tender leafy greens, because they give you a lot of nutrition. Vitamins, of course, we are vegans, so B12 is always a must. And vitamin D, if you live in cold weather. Iodine, of course. Seaweeds gives you plenty. Calcium, everything has calcium. Oranges has calcium. Greens have calcium, and all the elements. Zinc, pumpkin seeds, everything is out there. How to get your vitamin B12? I prefer methylcobalamin. It could come sublingual presentation or in a spray. You can get intramuscular injections every 3 months or so, but I prefer, just sublingual. That's less traumatic for me. And vitamin D, if you can get sun exposure, great. If not, get supplements, especially during the winter. So I didn't touch much on everything else because I want to have room for questions, and I don't want to rush, So I think this is a message that I wanted to convey. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Follow me on my social media at Raw Vegan Doctor. I try to update you with what's going on with my life in terms of the events that I'm going to be giving presentations, or, sometimes I share my food, what I eat, things like that. Everything with the purpose of improving the health of the people who follow me on social media. So thank you so much for listening, and I'm happy to get any questions.
Thank you. That was very interesting. I don't know much about a raw vegan diet, I have to say, but I was actually surprised to hear that the bulk of the diet should be fruits. So how many fruits do you eat per day? Just a rough idea.
Yeah, like for example, as I said, I usually don't have breakfast because I do the intermittent fasting thing, which is very beneficial. But for beginners, probably my breakfast will be 1 papaya, or if I can pack 2 papayas, that will be my breakfast. Then for lunch, I will have I put to soak some chia seeds, and I blend maybe 2 bananas, and then I throw the chia seeds in, and it's kind of like a nice pudding. Mm-hmm. And I top that with more chopped bananas and blueberries, and maybe some walnuts on top. So that will be my lunch. Sometimes if I'm still hungry, I will eat something along the same line, like more bananas, or maybe I have apples with me. I just keep it practical. So many people do more elaborated stuff, but let's say I already had 2 papayas. So in my smoothie and my bowl with bananas and blueberries, probably 4 bananas, maybe a cup of blueberries, maybe a handful of walnuts, maybe 2 tablespoons of chia seeds. And that was my banana blueberry pudding, if you want to call it that way, for lunch. If I want to snack on something, more bananas, more apples. And then at lunchtime, I forget about fruit and I have a huge salad. I mean, huge. Lots of leafy greens, chopped tomatoes, half of an avocado. I do dressings to make it thicker with celery, with zucchini. So instead of adding more avocados, I make a more thickened dressing, just relying on a little bit of fat. And it's so satisfying and delicious, just a matter of educating yourself and being more creative. But yeah, sometimes I eat mangoes instead of papayas for breakfast, but it's always fruit in the morning and lunchtime, and then I focus on the veggies.
Okay, that sounds interesting. And I have a question. Somebody's asking, what about legumes and whole grains? Do you just have them like sprouted, or?
Yeah, I sometimes eat sprouts in my dinner, like my toppings, probably like alfalfa sprouts or lentil sprouts, but it's not necessarily like my main focus. I know that beans are emphasized a lot in the cooked plant-based whole food diet, but it's not necessarily something that is a must. You know, I can get all the nutrition from beans, from fruits and leafy greens and seeds.
It's interesting you say that, because although I love legumes and I follow a no oil whole food plant-based diet, I don't think I eat that much. I actually eat more fruits and vegetables. But one of the things I didn't know is that you mentioned it is actually okay to steam or even boil your vegetables and mushrooms. So if you because somebody was asking, it is probably much easier to be a raw vegan if you're in a warm climate. So,
Yeah.
In the UK, when it is cold, it is okay to actually boil and steam the vegetables and maybe even make a soup or something?
Of course. I mean, there is a lot of myths in the raw vegan movement. Some people think, oh, if you cook your food, it's toxic. The toxicity of cooking our food comes from heating the fats or heating things that are going to generate trans fats or acrylamides, things like that. If you cook or boil with, just boil or steam some veggies, well, probably you're going to kill a little bit of the enzymes, but not 100%. You're still going to get some nutrition. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Okay. For me, I don't choose to do that because I just feel like my energy is just like, I need to rest after a meal, that even if it's cooked steamed veggies or something. But, if you're in the winter, I used to do that once in a while, like, okay, I need something warm, and nothing wrong with that,
Okay, one last question, because I love coffee. I drink a lot of coffee and tea, but I always time it with my vegetables and fruits because, of the absorption of nutrients. And also I think, I don't know, I haven't tried it, but I think it might actually give me like a reflux, or, kind of a heartburn. So how do you do that? Do you drink a tea or coffee with, on a raw vegan diet?
So I have to be super honest. I have a YouTube channel and I put like a video how to quit coffee, because I honestly think that if we follow a lifestyle that is healthy, we are not supposed to be depending on stimulants. If you have your nice, sleeping hours, I just feel energized just with my 7-8 hours sleep, running first thing in the morning, taking a cold shower, positive mindset. I don't need a stimulants to feel energized, but I'm a doctor. I'm sleep deprived all the time just because of the modernity, and probably I stay late night reading. Sometimes I use a little bit of coffee to kick up myself and keep making diagnosis in the morning just because I need the mental focus and clarity. Yeah. I don't think it's super detrimental like many people make it believe. Obviously, if you have 3 cups of coffee per day, well, you need to cut back a little bit. But, if you just need to feel the stimulation a little bit once in a while when you really need it, I don't think it's bad. I do it occasionally, but I procure not to do it.
That's very interesting. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. I think, we don't really hear much about, kind of a raw vegan diet and how to do that. Just one last question is coming through. Brenda Davis says that a raw vegan diet may be beneficial for people with inflammatory arthritis. What do you think? Well, obviously, I think.
Of course. I mean, I'm a runner, and my joints hurt the most when I was in a raw vegan. I had to recover a lot. I have to warm up because in the morning I was stiff, and it's inflammation in my joints. So in chronic arthritis, just go to Dr. Brooke Goldner, Goodbye Lupus. Even though you don't have lupus, you have arthritis, or whoever has arthritis. It's a type of autoimmune disorder. And I'm sorry I didn't touch base on inflammation, but a raw vegan diet amongst the whole food plant-based diet is the least inflammatory diet. So fruit is anti-inflammatory, raw meat is anti-inflammatory. So if you want to decrease your pain in arthritis or any autoimmune disease, incorporate like 90%, or if you can, raw vegan, and you will improve tremendously.
Yeah, to be honest, I think, because I used to suffer from chronic migraines, I think if you're in pain and you're desperate, definitely try it. Why not? Just give it a try. So that was lovely. I really enjoyed it, Areli. Thank you so much for joining us. And I think it is lunchtime, your time, isn't it now?
Yeah,
it's lunchtime. All right. Have a nice day, and I'll speak to you soon then. Take care.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Have a great time. Bye.
Bye. Well, that was very interesting. I learned something new, well, a lot actually. And our next talk is actually very interesting as well. It is a topic we haven't covered before, so that's why it is very interesting. It is about skin health. And our speaker, first of all, I should actually say that unfortunately, she cannot make it. She has some internet issues, but she was kind enough to actually send us a recording, which we are going to play to you. And she's going to join us for Q&A. So if you have any questions, please write in the chat box. She is going to join us after the recording to answer your questions. So her name is Dr. Sonia Gandhi. She is a GP and a lifestyle medicine physician with a special interest in dermatology, skin issues. And her talk is titled Skin Deep. And I think we are going to play the recording now. Just give me a second. Yeah, it's coming on.
Thank you, Plant-Based Powered Expo and Plant-Based Health Professionals, for inviting me to speak to you today about skin. The title of my talk today is Skin Deep, Scratching Beneath the Surface. My name is Dr. Sonia Gandhi, and I'm an NHS GP at a practice in Southwest London. I have a special interest in dermatology, and I'm also a certified lifestyle medicine physician working for the newly launched online service called Plant-Based Health Online. So, without further ado, I'm going to take you on a whistle-stop tour exploring what the skin is, what its function is, its anatomy, the role of vitamin D, sun and skin cancer, modern-day skin problems, and lifestyle modifications for healthy skin. So let's look at what skin is. It's the largest organ in the body, and it has a surface area of approximately 1.8 meters squared and weighs approximately 16% of the body's weight. What does skin do? Let's have a look at its function. Well, often when we think of skin, we often equate it with aesthetics, and whilst in 2018, the cosmetic industry was worth a staggering $507.8 billion US, it's actually projected to be worth around $758.4 billion US by 2025. Makeup and cosmetics have actually been ubiquitous throughout history, with the ancient Egyptians applying makeup not only to enhance their looks, but also for symbolic and ritualistic purposes. But aside from the aesthetic aspect of skin, it actually plays a significant and essential role in our health and well-being. It acts as a barrier against toxins, chemicals, and unwanted pathogens. It plays a crucial role in regulating our body temperature. It controls water loss. It is a sensory organ. It protects us against the sun's harmful rays, and it plays a critical role in vitamin D production. So let's now have a look at the anatomy of skin. Well, skin is essentially composed of 3 layers: the epidermis, the dermis, and the hypodermis, which is also known as the subcutaneous or subcutaneous fat layer. The epidermis is further divided up into 4 layers, and the dermis plays host to sebaceous glands, which are just here, attached to hair follicles, sweat glands, blood vessels, and nerves. Let's look at the epidermis in a bit more detail. It's the outer covering, and as I've mentioned, it consists of 4 layers: the stratum corneum, the stratum granulosum, the stratum spinosum, and the stratum basale. The epidermis contains various different cell types. One of them is called the keratinocytes. These produce keratin, which is an essential component of hair and nails. It also provides physical protection and waterproofs the skin. There are also melanocytes in the epidermis. These produce melanin and provide skin its colour, and they also provide us protection against the sun. Langerhans cells are also found in the epidermis, and these are part of the immune system. They are the outermost sentinel of the immune system. They keep guard. There are also Merkel cells in the epidermis, which are involved in sensory. They have a sensory role involved in touch. The epidermis varies in thickness on differing body sites. So from most of the body, the epidermis measures about 0.1 millimeters, but on the palms and the soles, the epidermis can be in the range of 0.8 to 1.4 millimeters. The dermis lies immediately below the epidermis, and it consists of 2 layers, the papillary layer and the reticular layer. And the papillary layer contains nerve endings, and the reticular layer contains the collagen, elastin, hyaluronic acid. And together, the dermis provides structural strength to skin. It has all that supportive connective tissue within it. It contains the fibroblasts, which make the collagen, and elastin. It also, as I said, contains sebaceous glands, sweat glands, hair follicles, blood vessels, nerves, lymphatics, and it varies in thickness from 0.6 millimeters in the eyelids to 3 millimeters or more on the back, the palms, and the soles. And then we have the subcutis or the hypodermis layer, and this sits below the dermis. It is a loose layer, a layer of loose connective tissue and fat, and it acts as an insulator and attaches the skin to underlying fascia. Now, skin is not a static organ, it's a dynamic organ, so it changes as we age. When we're younger, the skin is smoother, thicker, and tighter. As we age, we then develop wrinkles, deep wrinkles. And as you can see in the dermis, there's an abundance of fibroblasts, an abundance of collagen, elastin, and hyaluronic acid. But as we age, you can see that there is a lack of these essential components that provide the skin its tensile and elastic properties. So what happens in the aging process? Well, it is based on intrinsic factors and extrinsic factors. So genetics, thinning of the skin, the presence of fine wrinkles, dry skin, telomere shortening. Telomeres are the caps that are found at the end of our chromosomes, and shortening of these contributes to the aging process. Also fluctuating hormone levels, particularly decreasing estrogen around the time of menopause, oxidative stress and mitochondrial dysfunction. These all lead to impaired function of the skin barrier. Now, the extrinsic factors, these are essentially environmental factors that speed up the intrinsic aging process. These consist of pollution, smoking, alcohol, nutrition, impaired sleep, stress, and ultraviolet light. So now let's move on to look at sun, vitamin D, and skin cancer. Sun, is it our friend or is it our foe? vitamin D, we've known since the 1920s that it plays a crucial role in bone health and preventing rickets. But we've also since then discovered that it regulates more than 200 genes, and it plays an important role in immunity, both in terms of infectious diseases and autoimmune conditions, such as rheumatological conditions, also in cardiovascular health. And there's actually ongoing research looking at its role in cancer. And vitamin D is not actually a vitamin, it's a prohormone that's produced in the sun, in the skin during exposure to sunlight. And it's particularly the UVB rays that it needs exposure to in order to be synthesized. You require around 10 minutes per day for paler skins and around 25 minutes per day for darker skins in order for the vitamin D to be synthesized. But the problem with countries like the UK that lie in northern latitudes is that during the autumn and winter months from October through to March, we just do not get enough UVB from the sun to activate this vitamin D synthesis. So that's why it's actually recommended that we should all be taking a vitamin D supplement. And as we've already mentioned, we know that vitamin D has a role in protecting us against infectious diseases, in respiratory infections. And whilst the data on COVID specifically is not yet conclusive, there is growing circumstantial evidence that it does have a significant role to play. So on one hand, we're told that we need more sun exposure for vitamin D activation, yet on the other hand, we're told to avoid the sun due to the risk of skin cancer. So it can be really, really confusing. And the rates of skin cancer have risen so significantly since the 1970s that melanoma is now the 5th most common cancer in the UK. And every year, approximately 15,000 people are diagnosed with melanoma. And the main risk factors for melanoma are UV exposure. And in fact, the Royal Marsden Hospital actually cite that significant sun exposure in childhood is the single most important lifestyle risk factor, and that blistering sunburn during childhood or young adulthood actually doubles the chances of developing melanoma later on in life. And then other risk factors are fair skin, genetics, immune deficiency, or a large number of moles. And with melanoma, we are really looking at these changes here, the ABCD, asymmetry, if the molar lesion's looking asymmetrical, border, if it's got an irregular border, if there are any mixed colors or color changes, the diameter, particularly if it's 6 millimeters or above. Sometimes melanoma can be smaller, around 4 millimeters. Also, if the mole is evolving, if it's changed, if it's become itchy or bleeding or irritating, then these are all warning signs. The other type of skin cancer is the non-melanoma type. This consists of either the BCC, basal cell carcinoma, or the SCC, squamous cell carcinoma. And whilst this type of cancer, non-melanoma, are not metastatic, they can still cause significant localized destruction of the tissue. So can lifestyle play a role in skin cancer? Well, we know that sun protection is critical. So wearing a sun block of an SPF minimum of 30 to provide protection against UVB rays. And also it should have a UVA rating, A is for aging, of 4 or 5. We should also be wearing a wide-brimmed hat in the summer, seeking the shade and avoiding the intense midday sun. And also there's been some research into looking at tomatoes, because tomatoes are rich in a chemical called lycopene. And studies in the last 2 decades have shown that eating tomatoes or tomato-derived products has shown that there's a decrease in sensitivity to UV light, and as a result, decreased sun-induced redness by around 40%. Now, there's also a role of vitamin B3, which is also known as nicotinamide. This plays a role in the repair of melanocytes. And studies in Australia have shown that vitamin B3 is safe and effective in reducing the rates of new non-melanoma skin cancers, such as SCCs or BCCs, and possibly they might play a role in the prevention of melanoma, but there is ongoing research in this. And whilst this is common practice in Australia, it's not quite common practice in the UK. So let's look at modern day skin problems. Let's have a look at acne first. Acne, it's really common. The worldwide prevalence is about 9.4%, and approximately 85% of adolescents are affected. And it takes up 3.5 million GP appointments each year. We think it's multifactorial. Genetics are involved, hormones, it's an inflammatory condition, environment also has a role to play, particularly diet. And acne causes significant psychological distress, and it causes painful infection and scarring. So what happens in acne? Well, you can see from this slide here, this is a healthy sebaceous gland here. This is the pore, and this is known as the pilosebaceous unit, which contains the hair follicle. When there's an accumulation of sebum from the sebaceous gland and an accumulation of dead skin cells, known as hyperkeratinization, this blocks the hair follicle, it plugs it. And then you then get proliferation of the bacteria C. acnes, which results in inflammation. And just on the right-hand side here, you can just see the different types of acne pimples. This is a healthy pilosebaceous unit. This is a whitehead where the pore is sealed within the skin. An open comedo, or known as a blackhead, where the skin is open. Then you then get infection, and then you then develop the papule into a pustule. So let's look at the biochemistry, what's happening from a biochemical perspective in acne. Well, something called IGF, insulin-like growth factor, and this actually decreases something called FOXO1. When there's a decrease of FOXO1, there's an increased activation of something called mTORC1. Now, mTORC1 is involved in cell division and metabolism, but in acne, what happens is that mTORC1 leads to a production of excess sebum and hyperkeratinization, which is the dead skin cells. And then these then lead to the development of acne. Now, dairy and meat contain an amino acid called leucine, and leucine directly increases the activation of mTORC1, which again then feeds into this pathway, leading into a high incidence of acne. Also, having a diet that has high GI index, so high in sugars and also in dairy, again increases circulating insulin, which then results in increased IGF-1, and increased IGF-1 also directly increases sebum production. It also increases the amount of circulating androgens, which again increase sebum production, again all feeding into the development of acne. Now, omega-3 fatty acids can help to lower the inflammation aspect of acne. So let's look at other causes or exacerbating factors of acne. Well, over-cleansing can be a problem. The use of hairstyling products, oils and serums, having a fringe, wearing hats and helmets, these can all contribute to something called forehead acne. We already discussed the role of processed foods, high sugar, high fat, and dairy. And mobile phones, these are teeming with pathogens. You know, they are a transmitter of bacteria. And also sweaty gym clothes. You know, if you work out and you don't change out of those sweaty gym clothes or have a shower, then that can also trigger the development or exacerbate acne, particularly on the back or the chest. So what are the treatments for acne? Well, it's dependent on severity. Traditionally, topical benzoyl peroxide, topical antibiotics, topical retinoids. In more severe acne, you might use oral antibiotics, and in females, Dianet. And in very severe acne, oral Roaccutane, which is prescribed in secondary care, or laser treatment, which tends not to be available on the NHS, but is available privately. Are there lifestyle measures that you can do to improve acne? Absolutely. We know that nutrition plays a significant role in our skin health. A whole food plant-based diet, which is rich in antioxidants, such as vitamin A, C, and E. These are all crucial for skin health. They also contain, a whole food plant-based diet also contains omega-3s, which are anti-inflammatory. And citrus fruits, such as vitamin C, which are antioxidants, these also help stimulate collagen productions. And as we've alluded to, tomatoes, which contain lycopene, they are anti-inflammatory. Sweet potatoes and carrots, which are rich in beta-carotene, which is vitamin A, play a significant role. Avocados, walnuts, rich in vitamin E, very good for skin health. And dark leafy green vegetables contain a type of carotenoid called lutein, which is also an antioxidant. And we also know from studies that stress can exacerbate acne, so it's also important to employ techniques to manage your stress levels. So let's have a look now at dermatitis or eczema. Dermatitis is inflammation of the skin. We think in 50% of cases it's genetic due to a mutation of the filaggrin gene. 1 in 5 children suffer from it, 1 in 12 adults, and it causes severe itch, redness, and a rash. So what happens in dermatitis or eczema is that there's a breakdown of the skin barrier, and then you have immune changes due to these antigen invasions, again, resulting in the itch, rash, and infection. So triggers, are there triggers for eczema and dermatitis? Absolutely. Cow's milk allergy protein in infants can be a trigger. Contact allergens, pollens, central heating, particular problem in the winter months. Air conditioning, a problem in the summer months. Clothing, such as wool. Food allergies, swimming in chlorinated water, house dust mites, hard water, and pollution can all be triggers. So what are the treatments? Well, exclusion of the trigger factor, if it's identifiable, the use of topical emollients, topical steroids, or immunomodulator creams such as Elidel or Protopic. And in more severe cases of eczema or dermatitis, we would use phototherapy or systemic medications such as methotrexate, azathioprine, cyclosporin, or biologicals. So are there lifestyle improvements for dermatitis? Absolutely, yes. Exclusion of the trigger allergen. And the most offending foods for dermatitis are cow's milk, eggs, soy, gluten, nuts, fish, and shellfish. Also washing powders, shower gels, soaps, all can be triggers for dermatitis, as we've already discussed, clothing, and hard water. Hard water increases the exposure of sodium lauryl sulfates in soaps and shower gels, which irritate the skin. And there's a trial called the SOFTER trial, which has been running by King's College and in conjunction with the St. John's Dermatology Institute, guys in St. Thomas's Hospital, and they're looking to see whether water softeners can have a role to play in the prevention of eczema. We also know that decreasing processed foods improves dermatitis, eczema, and having a diet that's rich in whole food plant-based diets, so including fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts and seeds, improves dermatitis. And also there's been some interesting studies from Korea looking at fermented foods such as kimchi, which have also been shown to have a reduced incidence of dermatitis. So let's now move on to psoriasis. Psoriasis, it affects 2 to 3% of the global population. The peak onset of age is around 15 to 25 and 50 to 60 years of age. 30% of people with psoriasis also have psoriatic arthropathy, and there's an increased incidence of psoriasis with cardiovascular disease and diabetes, and also psoriasis is an autoimmune condition. It's inflammatory, it has a high cell turnover, and there is a genetic component to psoriasis. There's a family history in 40 to 50%, and 75% if the onset is less than 20 years of age. The lifetime risk of psoriasis is 4% if there's no family history, and 1%, 28% if one parent is affected, and if both parents are affected, then that risk goes up to 65%. Now, psoriasis has a huge social stigma attached to it, and we mustn't underestimate the mental health impact that psoriasis has on its patients and the decreased quality of life as a result. So as I alluded to, there is normally, normally the skin turnover is every 28 days. However, in psoriasis, this is sped up, so that the skin is turning over every 3 to 4 days due to an inflammatory response where the T cells trigger release of cytokine chemicals, resulting in redness, itchiness, scaliness, and plaques. And are there triggers for psoriasis? Absolutely. Stress, alcohol, smoking, infections, obesity, drugs such as ibuprofen, beta blockers, lithium, even injuries such as a cut or an abrasion or sunburn, and this is known as the Kubner phenomenon. These can all trigger psoriasis. So what are the treatments for psoriasis? Well, emollients, vitamin D analogues such as calcipotriol or calcitriol, tar preparations, and in severe cases we use phototherapy, oral systemic medications such as methotrexate, cyclosporin or acitretin, and also biologicals such as the TNF blockers. So are there improvements that you can do through your lifestyle for psoriasis? Absolutely, indeed. There's an abundance of evidence showing that a whole food plant-based diet can help. Decreasing stress will help. Exercise, increasing your exercise will help improve psoriasis, as will reduction and elimination of alcohol and the cessation of smoking. So just a couple of thoughts as the presentation comes to an end. I hope I have shown to you that through lifestyle improvements such as sleep, which is important for the repair and regeneration of skin cells. It decreases cortisol levels, improves hydration, maintaining a healthy weight, because obesity alters the skin barrier by increasing the amount of exercise we do and maintaining physical activity, because this slows down aging, reducing our stress levels because this decreases inflammation, stopping smoking because of the association with oxidative stress, watching our environment in terms of sun protection, pollution, hard water, decreasing or eliminating alcohol because this decreases inflammation, and a whole food plant-based diet that's rich in antioxidants such as vitamin A, C, E, omega-3s, lycopene, lutein. All of these are such important aspects of our lifestyle, which help in ensuring that we have healthy skin, because skin is the outer reflection of our inner health. Thank you very much. And I just have some references here for you if you wish to have a look at these. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Oh, that was very interesting. And we are very lucky because Sonia has actually joined us, so she can answer your questions. Sonia, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you see me? Yes.
Yes.
Hi.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
I didn't get to the Q&A.
Yeah.
So that was very interesting talk. Thank you. So I'm just going to start with the questions. The first one is, where was it? Yes. What about prickly heat rash?
So prickly heat is actually a rash that tends to come on in conditions of heat and sweating, so hot, humid environments. And it tends to be a rash that it presents with itch, redness. It is a severe itch, little bumps. So it looks prickly. That's why it's given the name prickly heat. The actual dermatological name is Malaria rubrum. As I said, it tends to come on when the skin is occluded. So the sweat glands, they can't quite function properly. So it becomes a hot, sweaty environment. So certain clothes might precipitate it. If you're wearing something that just doesn't let the heat or your sweat transmit easily, that could be a trigger factor. With regards to sort of lifestyle improvements for prickly heat, I mean, really, you want to try and keep the area exposed if possible, wearing light, cool clothing, you could use something to cool the skin. But the mainstay of treatment really is using a topical steroid cream, something like hydrocortisone. But it tends to resolve. It's nothing. It's not a chronic condition. It's not anything life-threatening or insignificant. It's annoying and it can be painful, but it's easily treatable.
Thank you. That was good. So last question. Well, actually, I have one question myself, but one question from the audience. You mentioned that vitamin C helps to stimulate the production of collagen. Are there any other foods you would suggest?
I mean, really, just having a whole food plant-based diet will ensure that you're getting all the antioxidants that you need, not just for healthy skin, but just general good health. But as you know, skin is an outer reflection of our inner health. So if we are eating in a healthful way, that will manifest. But I mean, there's an abundance of foods that have vitamin C. I mean, mainly it's like the citrus fruits, kiwis have vitamin C, and there's so many foods out there that have got that come as packages that don't just have one vitamin, but they have other, several vitamins in them. So the aim really is to try and ensure that you're eating the rainbow every day, and trying to eat at least 30 to 40 different varieties of fruit, plant-based foods in a week. And that's really the healthiest way. Making sure you're drinking lots of water as well, because things like alcohol and caffeine, these can actually dehydrate the skin. So you really want to keep the skin hydrated. So a combination of having a good, varied, whole food plant-based diet will ensure that you're going to get enough vitamin C in there to have good collagen production and healthy skin.
Yeah, and I think it is really good because when you get your vitamin C from foods, as you said, it comes packed with other nutrients. So it's not just one single, vitamins. So you get a rainbow, you get a lot of different nutrients. That's really good. Thank you. And we don't really have a lot of, there's one more question. Which sunscreen lotion would you recommend and which factor? That's the last question, by the way, from the audience. Okay, go on.
So sunscreen, really you want to go for a minimum of SPF 30. There isn't much difference between 30 and 50 in terms of the percentage protection that you're going to get. It's just a couple of percent more, you know. So SPF 30 is fine. I said it's just 2 or 3% difference in terms of protection you'll get from sun, but 30 is fine. There isn't. I don't have any allegiances to any particular brands. I think you just have to find something that suits your skin, that also has a UVA rating of at least 4 or 5 stars on it as well. And I guess it depends on the activity you're doing. I mean, if you're going to be going into a swimming pool, or you want to make sure that it's waterproof, it doesn't wash off straight away either. So it's just finding the right brand for you, and if you've got sensitive skin. But there's an abundance of sun lotions out there. I think if you go to any reputable pharmacy, they'd be able to point you in the right directions. But I don't have any particular allegiances to any particular brand per se. It's just a matter of personal choice, really, finding the one that suits you.
Thank you. And the last question is from me. We talk about the importance of having vitamin D, and we know actually if we don't take the supplements, we get it from, sun exposure. But at the same time, as you mentioned in your talk, actually, sun exposure is one of the main reasons for skin cancer. So how can we juggle that? How can we actually make sure that we get enough, but not too much?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's such a tricky one to answer, because on one hand, as I mentioned, it's really confusing. On one hand, we're told we need sun exposure to get our vitamin D production, but on the other hand, we're worried about the development of skin cancer. And really, for paler coloured skins, you only really need 10 minutes exposure, and that's not necessarily 10 minutes of sunbathing. This is just 10 minutes of just, you're out and about, you're walking in a park, just some sun exposure on your face or your arms or your hands, just for 10 minutes. For darker skins, you need about 25 minutes. I think, if you're beyond that, then obviously you might want to think about making sure you're wearing sun protection, and taking sensible precautions. You don't want to necessarily be in the direct sun's rays. Seek shade, wear a wide brimmed hat. Don't put on that tanning oil, because you don't want to burn the skin actively. So I know it's a really conflicting one. It's really confusing. There isn't a clear-cut answer. But I think it's about being sensible. You just do not want your skin to burn. You do not want it to get red. So sort of just walking down the street in the park for 10 minutes without any sunblock, should be sufficient for you to get enough. If you're pale skinned, if you're darker skinned, you need 25 minutes. But, as we live in a country that lies in the northern latitude, and for 6 months of the year, we just do not get enough sun exposure here. So you need to really supplement during those 6 months. Everybody should be. That's the advice. Everybody should be supplementing.
Yes, vegan or non-vegan. I think that's
yeah. Irrespective of your diet, everybody should be supplementing between October and March.
Thank you. That was really great. And I know you post quite a lot about skin issues. Where do you post? Where can people find you?
So you could find some of my posts on the Plant-Based Health Online Facebook page, and also if you want to find out more, please do look us up on Plant-Based Health Online. And also there's some amazing resources on plant-based health professionals as well. So just have a look there. I am on Instagram and Facebook as well as Dr. Sonia Gandhi. So you can find me there as well.
Thank you. That was really useful. Thank you so much for today. And I think Tim is going to join us now. Tim?
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, yes. Hello, Leila. Sonia, hello. I've been listening intently.
It's wonderful.
Yes, especially the last two talks, actually.
They were new. They were something different, weren't they? So we haven't had them before.
There's a very nice sunblock of you there.
You should have told me that before.
Mineral based,
Oh.
zinc oxide.
Fantastic.
With nice vegan, obviously not tested on animals. It's got it's a good 25 SPF 25. But there's no chemicals in there. It's just zinc oxide, so it makes it quite a thick paste.
Yeah.
But it's it's pretty good. It's got a UVA equivalent of 3-star, I think. So
Okay.
it's a 25 3.
Okay.
I must admit, I'm one of these people who doesn't wear sunblock. Actually, I was brought up in Greece. It was just sort of hung out in the sun for like 14 hours a day, pretty much, without much clothes on. Some clothes, obviously, but
in those days, you probably weren't having. You were moving. You're not lying like the way it's the concept. No.
I like sunbathing actually. Lying in the hot sun at like 40 degrees. In a hot sun, 35, 40 degrees is my idea of a very nice, pleasant way to spend the afternoon. I know, it's shocking, really.
Can't
wait for the sun to get out and do everything like the opposite of what you said, really. But to be honest, as I get a bit older, and obviously, as you do get older, first of all, you pay attention more generally. You listen to your body, hopefully, more because you're aware of some of the deterioration naturally.
Yeah.
But you do listen to the sort of common sense a little bit more, and the science is obviously points to. So I think what you said is really true. Is a bit, to get some fresh air and get your sunlight on your body is really important. But to really overexpose.
Yeah.
I'm lucky. I don't burn at all, so I could quite happily lie in the sun for a few hours.
Yeah.
Quite happy, more than quite happy. Actually, but
the other aspect of that is that people's lifestyles we are kind of unhealthier, aren't we? Perhaps 40 years ago, from a lifestyle perspective, your family would have had healthier habits, and we don't realize that actually has an impact on our immune system. So, there's that balance. Even like what you're consuming can actually protect you against the sun, like lycopene in tomatoes. That can have, that's been now shown in studies that it has a protective effect against sun red burning erythema. So, I think there's a lot behind. It's complicated. You can't.
Is the advice you have for people? I know you mentioned it, sort of fair-skinned people, perhaps 10 minutes. People, Asian people, maybe 25 minutes. What about if you're a black person? If you've got very, very black skin, does that make a further difference? Would that be
so?
The
darker you are, obviously, you are better protected against the sun because you've got the melanin protecting you. But having said that, black people and Asian people, they can get melanomas. It's not that it doesn't happen in them. It's just very rare, but it can happen. So because it's the sun's rays, it's ultraviolet radiation, so if you've got too much of it, it can burn you. But in terms of vitamin D absorption, the darker you are, the longer you need to be in the sun to get the absorption of the sun's rays to activate the vitamin D. So it's not the same for everybody. It depends on what color. And it doesn't matter on ethnicity either. That's another misnomer. People think, if you're like black or Indian or Arabic, that you're all one category, but you're not. Within those ethnicities, you've still got subcategories of colouring tones. There'll be people who are Asian, but they could be extremely fair-skinned, or they might be darker-skinned within that. I mean, you just look at a country like India, you've got such a variety in skin colouring. So it's not a homogenous cohort of people. It depends on your actual skin colour rather than your ethnicity. Does that make sense? Yeah.
No, it's really interesting, and I think.
But my son, he's really pale skinned. I mean, I'm Indian, and he's so white. He's paler than I am, and he burns. You know, if he's not covered in sunblock, he will go red, he'll burn. So from that way perspective, his skin behaves as if it's a Caucasian skin. Whereas, you know, I've got other family members who are much darker and they don't have problems with sun, they don't burn, you know, they can stay out a lot longer and not wear sunblock and get away with it. But I think also the ozone layer, there's a problem with that now as well, you know, the breakdown of the ozone layer, I guess due to climate change and how we've been living on this planet, that protective layer in the atmosphere has now gone as well. So we're more exposed to the harmful radiation.
Yeah, it is really, you know, a complex issue, isn't it? It's not just a one aspect, and we just do our best with what we have available, you know.
Yeah.
And try to optimize it.
Yeah. So I didn't go into that in detail in the talk, because I just wanted to do an overview of a lot of different skin conditions. I just touched on it, but perhaps I should have gone into it in a bit more depth. I don't know. But anyway.
It's really interesting to just talk about it and perhaps broach that subject and encourage people to, you know, go to the resources you mentioned, the Plant-Based Health Professionals website, and to consider these aspects, especially about the balance. And I'm sure you both agree that underpinning it, the one thing we can do is always, you know, is that seeking that whole food rainbow plant-based diet, unprocessed, good exercise, mental health, you know, good lifestyle approaches, positive thinking is really important, especially when you're, you know, combating mental health issues and whole aspects of our modern day living, which, as you say, is so conflicted these days. There's so many different considerations, as it were. But the one underpinning one is that whole food rainbow raw food diet. I would say, having listened to the raw talk, I've been raw 3 times in my life. I went raw in 1990, in the year 2000, and again in the year 2010. Both the last 2 times actually have been paying attention to all those aspects mentioned in the talk. Even so, I did get I lost a lot of weight, a lot of strength, felt quite under-energized. I think it's important you should pay attention to your own body, and perhaps this comes to the same with skin and sun, and you know, you listen to your own body and what that's saying, and not necessarily fight against it. If you come into a better balance, that you think, rather than being dogmatic and holding on to a set of rules, is to be flexible. And I think with the raw diet, I would certainly say from experience of over 3 decades, you have to be careful, definitely be careful, you know, for a long period. Although I do know people, like Kate Magic, been raw 25 years, brought up 3 kids, raw, really successfully, really healthily. So it certainly suits, you know, some people. But again, it was a really interesting talk to listen to. And Layla, thank you for putting together such a fabulous lineup an afternoon, and so accessible and relevant, so detailed but easy to access and understand. It's been a pleasure to listen to. And,
thank you for having us.
Thank you.
It's been great, and all your members, all your people. I know you've got a big team there participating, and it's growing. We've had some really amazing sessions over the last 6-7 months, you know.
Yes.
And always a popular viewing for people. I think very, 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 very positive development that we've seen over the last 18 months. There's a real growth of the plant-based health professionals. And of course, the plant-based, just tell us a little bit before we end up, which I know we're going to do in about 1 minute, because we're just about hit 6 o'clock. Later, the new development, which is the plant-based health online, where you can go and actually seek sort of one-to-one professional consultations now. Is that?
Yes, you can actually kind of, you know, if you look us up, and Sonia is part of it, I'm part of it, and Laura Freeman, so we are, and Jennifer Fernandez, who was here earlier. So we are a team of plant-based healthcare professionals. We are advocating lifestyle first. And it is, yes, as you mentioned, one-on-one. So you get, you know, your private consultation, and you can really focus on nutrition, how to improve it. So it is for people who are already following a vegan diet and they want just they have health issues. There is actually we have different specialties as well. Like Sonia is obviously covering skin issues, and we have Lisa Simon fertility. So it is we are actually a nice group of different specialties. Yeah, so have a look, and you can book a 10-minute free inquiry call. So that is good, just to get an idea what we offer and if you want to book an appointment. So
that's great. Layla, I think we'll post those details in the Facebook. So keep an eye out for that. But we'll also, somebody in our team will be doing a MailChimp shortly.
Lovely.
If you find some time to do it, so we get that done. But that's going out actually next week. There'll be a whole MailChimp about the new developments from the plant-based health professionals. So that's just great. Again, thank you. Thank you to Shireen and to all the participants. And for all your supporters too, all the people who've been supporting. I know you've got a growing membership. I think Shireen mentioned earlier, 700 members now. That is really impressive. So we'd love to see that go and keep growing. I think the next time we see you is in our magazines.
Yes, hopefully. Looking forward to that. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Bye.
Bye.